These stories are taken from the book Little Western Engines. Busy going backwards. Toad the brake van was feeling sad. Everywhere he looked, he could see engines and coaches moving steadily forwards. They all looked confident and cheerful. One day, he decided to talk to Oliver, the Great Western Engine. I'm always going backwards, Mr. Oliver. I have forward thinking views. I could be a leader if you know what I mean. You can't be a leader without a train to follow you. You don't have a train, Gordon said. Toad felt sadder still. Oliver wanted to help. You're a really useful brake van, Toad. You help me brake and you keep my trucks in order when we go down hills. I know, Mr. Oliver, but it would be so exciting to go forwards for a change instead of always seeing things sliding away from me. The trucks were cross with Toad. Who's he to start complaining? He's lucky to be able to look after us. Let's teach him a lesson. Oliver and Toad are taking a ballast train to the other side of the island. The trucks decide to carry out their plan when they reach Gordon's Hill. When they were nearly at the top, they played their tricks. Ready, steady, go, said the trucks, and they jerked at a coupling which broke. We're making your wish come true, Toad! Follow the leader, yelled the trucks. Toad was still in a state of shock, so he didn't know what to think, and he couldn't ask the guard. He had jumped clear. Oliver realized what was happening and quickly stopped and reversed backwards to chase after the trucks. Faster, faster, as fast as you want, screamed the trucks. Suddenly, Toad found it all rather fun, but the fun was soon over. A crossing lay ahead and the gates were closed. Toad couldn't stop. Worse still, Toad now realized he was on the wrong track. There ahead was Gordon. The signalman changed the points just in time. On, faster, cried the trucks. Suddenly, he saw James pulling a long, slow train. Help, save me, cried Toad. A quick-thinking shunter did, just in time. What was that? Exclaimed James. The signalman warned the station master at the next station. There's a runaway coming. We'll send them into the sidings. Help, help, cried Toad again. Toad saw some buffers. Those will stop me. But the points of the buffers weren't set on time. Oh no, I'm back on the main line. Meanwhile, Oliver was racing to the rescue. I must catch Toad. I must. Toad sped past Henry. More danger lay ahead. Men were working on the road bridge, but they had been warned about the runaway Toad and his trucks. They diverted him onto old sidings, straight into a muddy pool. Ooh! Stopped at last. Oliver arrived, and when he saw Toad, he could only smile. A pond is the only place for a toad, I suppose. That night, Toad spoke to Oliver. I'm sorry, Mr. Oliver, if I caused you any embarrassment. That's all right, Toad. So what do you think of going forwards? It was fun, but from now on, I'll be happy to look forward to the future. Busy going backwards, so to speak. Oliver's Fine. Oliver and his brake van Toad liked working on the Little Western branch line, but one morning Toad noticed that Oliver was unhappy in the yards. He decided to find out why. Excuse me, Mr. Oliver. It seems to me that things are not well with you, if you forgive me for mentioning it. You're quite right, Toad, replied Oliver. All I do is shunt these trucks onto the turntable. Since I had to work at the big yards for a while, I'm longing for a nice run. It's what an engine really needs. Quite so, Mr. Oliver. May I suggest that you speak to the Fat Controller about your problems? Oliver just grew unhappier, and he was rough with the trucks. You're no good, Oliver. You're dangerous. We want Percy. Pa, Percy's far too busy to be bothered with the likes of you, and he bumped the trucks hard, sending them falling into the turntable. You silly engine, shouted a workman. It'll take a long time to repair this turntable, which causes confusion and delay. That night, the Fat Controller came to see Oliver in his shed. Oliver, you have caused confusion. I thought you could control trucks. You shall work the mail train for a while. Maybe the night air will clear your smoke box. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir, said Oliver sadly. Cheer up, old chap, said his driver. The mail train run is a grand run for a fine engine like you. Oliver smiled. but he still felt he had let everyone down. May I tag along, Mr. Oliver? Of course, Toad. His driver took them along the coastal run with the mail train. The sea is calm and the fresh air couldn't help but brighten Oliver's spirits. They made good speed until it was time to collect some important mail from Harold the helicopter. Come on, Harold! They waited and waited. At last, Harold landed. Sorry I'm late, Great Western. Had a bit of a problem with one of my arms. Kept letting me down when I was meant to be up. You know how it is, said Harold. We know we're going to be late for our first run, replied Toad. Soon they were on their way again. Ahead was a red signal light. Oliver didn't realize that the signalman had dozed off waiting for them. Oliver whistled several times, but the signal stayed red. There must be something wrong with that signal. We'll go slowly and stop by the signal box, said his driver. But they never reached it. The point before the signal box was switched to an old track. They were going the wrong way. Where are we going, Mr. Oliver? Worried Toad. The driver, fireman, and guard were worried as they went down the line, but Oliver took no notice. We need to find a water tower soon, said the fireman. Instead, they saw an old rundown station. Disaster lay ahead as Oliver crashed straight into a shed. Are you alright, Mr. Oliver? I'm alright, Toad. Meanwhile, the Fat Controller was very worried. Oliver has not returned. We had better send out a search party. Soon he was high in the sky with Harold. They looked all around until... There they are, the Fat Controller called out. Oliver is spotted, and Harold landed next to him. It wasn't Oliver's fault, sighed the driver. I'm aware of that. I'm just glad that you're all safe. The Fat Controller looked all around. He realized the line and the old station used to serve a mountain village, which is still there today. They now used road as a transportation. Then he saw something. It was an empty old house beside the station. He went to inspect it. When he returned, he spoke to Oliver. You have found another attraction for our island. We'll make this house as good as new, and visitors can have tea and crumpets there. Sighed Oliver happily. Getting lost can be interesting, but being found is much nicer, especially when it makes the engine feel really useful. Agreed, Mr. Oliver, said Toad. Twin Trouble. One day, Donald and Douglas were chuffing through the countryside, hauling a heavy load from the mainland. Down the line, Trevor the traction engine had been struggling with a big cart's load of hay. Crossing the tracks at the level crossing, the cart's wheels had broken off. Then Trevor heard a whistle. Oh no, Trevor cried. Donald could see the cart, and the gates began to close. Stop, he cried. Donald's driver applied the brakes, but it was too late. Donald crashed into the cart. Luckily, no one was hurt. Stop being pushy, Donald snapped. Don't call me pushy, Douglas snapped back. You shouldn't have pushed me into the cart, huffed Donald. I'm sorry, said Douglas. I didn't know you were going to stop. You should have said earlier, argued Douglas. The twins continued to argue until help arrived. Before long, the track was cleared, and Donald and Douglas were on their way. After dropping off their load, the twins were so cross that they refused to speak to each other for the rest of the day as they continued on with their other jobs. The next day, the Fat Controller came to the sheds, needed an engine to help Duck at the smelter's yards. You only need one engine, he said. May I go, sir? Said Donald eagerly. The Fat Controller was surprised, but agreed. It's a good job you're going elsewhere. I work better on my own, sniffed Douglas. I have work to do, huffed Donald. At first, Donald enjoyed working with Duck. Then things started to go wrong. Do you shun those trucks on the other line? Donald asked. You said you wanted them on the other line, Duck replied. Not that other line, the other line. Donald was cross. Douglas would I know what I meant, he huffed. Douglas was working on his own. He chuffed cheerfully through the beautiful countryside. But Douglas began to think about yesterday's accident. Although he tried not to, he began to feel sorry for himself. I shouldn't have argued with Donald. It was an accident after all. Donald was having the same predicament. I shouldn't have argued with Ducky. It is an accident. He was so distracted that he didn't look where he was going. Duck could see he was getting too close to the buffers. Look out! He shouted, but it was too late. Donald fell into a pit. Duck knew he couldn't pull Donald back onto the rails, so he went for help. Douglas was sadly finishing his work as Duck steamed into the depot. Donald's in trouble, said Duck. Donald in trouble? Douglas cried. I'm on my way, and he steamed off as fast as he could. Douglas struggled and struggled. He finally pulled his twin gently back onto the tracks. He was relieved Donald wasn't hurt. Thank you, Donald said, and I'm sorry. No, I am sorry too, said Douglas. We were both in the wrong, said Donald. And we shouldn't have argued, said Douglas. I'm glad that both of you are back together, chuckled Duck. And they were. Snow Engine. Winter has come, and Duck and Oliver deliver goods and passengers when the roads are closed by deep snow. But Oliver thinks snow is messy and cold. I'm a Great Western engine, he chuffed one day. I shouldn't have to shiver. Begging your pardon, Mr. Oliver, said Toad, but I think snow is splendid. Huh. Later, Oliver saw some children building a giant snowman for the winter festival. They're making it in a field next to the village station where Oliver had found it many months back. Each time Oliver passed by, the snowman grew bigger. And bigger. And bigger. And bigger. Just an observation, Mr. Oliver. Snow is magical. Pah. Finally, the snowman was completed. Oliver chucked back to his warm, cozy shed. The Fat Controller was waiting for him. You will have to return to the mountain village. Some goods are needed for the festival, he said. But all this snow makes my wheels feel chilly. Really useful engines work hard whatever the weather. Soon Oliver was loaded and on his way. The snow was cold. It had frozen the points and diverted Oliver into the station sidings. Oh, shiver my boiler, cried Oliver. His driver applied the brakes. Is there a problem, Mr. Oliver? Before Oliver could reply, he crashed straight to the buffers and into the giant snowman. There is! That could have been a little smoother, said Toad. Oliver felt awful. He thought the children would be upset about their snowman. Oliver's driver went for help. The Fat Controller was just leaving his office when he got the call. Duck will bring the breakdown train first thing in the morning, he said. Oliver's driver returned and told him the news. I'll be up here all night, moaned Oliver. I'm afraid so. Luckily, the village inn had a toasty warm room for Oliver's crew. But Oliver was getting colder and colder. His fire had gone out and his funnel was covered in icicles. I was right all along. There was nothing magical about snow. Toad was beginning to think Oliver might be right. Brrr. The next morning, the children saw the situation. Look, a little girl shouted. Our snowman had eyes in his tummy. No, it doesn't, laughed a little boy. It's Oliver. That gave the children an idea. When Oliver woke up, he was surrounded by happy children. Oliver's a wonderful snow engine, they cried. Oliver was so relieved that suddenly he didn't feel cold anymore. When Duck arrived with the breakdown train, Oliver didn't want to leave. He was enjoying the winter festival so much. You were right, Toad, Oliver called. There are some magical things about snow. Perhaps, Mr. Oliver, shivered Toad. Definitely,